catch up, do the thing, work over here and over there, and maybe even over that way. Probably not over that way. Evening, folks. I hope everybody's doing good this Tuesday Eve. Been it's been busy. Been busy in my life lately. All sorts of fun when you work in the tech center, and tech as a whole is like going crazy right now, and not in a good way. It can make you a little extra busy. So let's let some folks get in here. We'll talk a couple things before I get on the topic. Um, I did. I moved a bunch of fish over the weekend. I emptied a bunch of tanks. I found some plecos I didn't know I had. Was like, I'm pretty sure I put two baby plecos in that tank, and it was no, I put four. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. You get babies and you give them enough like places to hide, and you got black backgrounds, and they know how they can darken themselves up. Wobbin boosters. Yeah, it can be kind of hard to see them. Had to do some had some sneaky games I had to play with some of my plecos. Like I removed all the other stuff that was in the tank for a day, and then put in just those like terracotta watering stakes that I like using as ancestral caves. Which I'm not the only one. Like, I got the idea from far smarter pleco people than me, right? And I only caught one fish doing that across four tanks. There's only like one male that was like, I would like to have a cave. Thank you very much. Wriggle my way into cave. Like, I noticed you're in a cave, fella. Blonk. I'm just going to move you over to this tank where you're going to go live now. Meh, I'm in a cave. The rest were all mostly female or too young to like need a cave, right? So I was moving some super red, like standard fins. I don't have long fin super reds, and some younger Wobbin boosters that were raised up from my breeding pair separately. So some of them went back in with their parents temporarily, until like, well, temporarily is in big quotation marks, until we can set up like the garage. They'll live there for a while, or if they start getting too big, I'll move them to some other tank and try to establish another like breeding group somewhere. And then I had a slightly larger female of the four, and move that over to a different tank where I have a couple other of my basically backup Wobbin Rooster females that I got from Marcel. So to diversify my genetics, I have one group that came from someone else, and I have a set of fish that came from Marcel. So that's Roseline 17 on Aquabid. I rant and rave about how amazing that man is. Um, so I think it's four females and two really good males and I mean, one male is the biggest male I have. Is bigger than even my like breeding colony male, dominant male. He's a big boy. He takes up a watering stake like it's nobody's business. He's just in there hulking that bad boy out. I have plecos on the way, right? I mentioned that for the Amazon Research Center's Christmas thing that they do where they give presents to the local children, I bought some Iquitos tiger plecos, which are a Panoculus, so the wood-eating species. Think like L397 or like it's 306. Those should show up tomorrow, and I will have them at my house for literally like half a day. And then when I get off of work, or if my friend Alyssa Bentley, no relation, gets off of work before I do, then one will go to the other, and those plecos go to Alyssa because she knows way more about plecos, is way better at them than I ever will be, and I would like to see them get bred so that we have more of this pleco because it's not very common. And I've talked to a few of my pleco friends, like Tom from Team Aquatics, for example, and it was just I kind of was like, hey man, how hard is this fish to get? Because I've never seen them. And it was one of those ones where it's like, because the 397s are so popular, they've kind of, the Iquitos tigers kind of haven't been given their due diligence and their due love. So I'm going to have an opportunity to give them a little love with my friend, helping me out because she's better at plecos than I am. I'm a dum dum. What else do we do? So where, and there'll be a video that covers a lot of this, but where all my smaller raising tanks used to be are going to turn into two 40-gallon breeders instead of a bunch of smaller tanks. I think the total gallonage change is like I go down something like 2 gallons per rack because each of those tanks were like 14 gallons. They're very weird. You know those crazy like high rim tanks that I had. I've drained all of them, removed their equipment, the whole shebang. I did all of that yesterday and Sunday. So yeah, I spent my birthday, by the way. Sunday was my birthday. I'm old. um and for those of you who sent well wishes on like Facebook and stuff, thank you very much. But I spent most of my day cleaning out 9 different filters and breaking down tanks. So I spent most of my day getting like filthy messy. Breaking down fish tanks, catching plecos, catching some rainbow fish, and moving. The rainbow fish went to the retirement tank. The plecos went to a couple different tanks. Yeah. And then the day before my birthday, I had a little excursion. I went out to a couple different stores and picked up some stuff, some wood, some plants. So that first 40-gallon breeder, we're going to make that thing sweet. Going to make a very nice display tank for a very special fish. You might be able to see that fish right now. So we're going to put the upper Torrey Rivers. We're going to give them a bigger system, and I'm going to get some more of them, just to have a slightly bigger group. I think it's 6. I lost like a couple from when I originally got them. And or they found their way in the back chambers, and I don't see them when I look in there, which is possible. But yeah, went up that group. They're gonna have a nice, cool 40 breeder. We might try to vaguely aquascape. Who knows? And that will be coming soon. I'm letting all those tanks, and yes, I know I'm filling some time, but I'm letting all those tanks dry in the room with the dehumidifier to get the last little bits of water that I couldn't get out with my siphon, right, with my Python. And then I'll move them all out. I kind of have to rewire that whole rack because it's not wired in a way that is efficient for that changeover. Redo like the air lines and all the stuff from the big pump that I have there, set up some lighting, etc., and then bring in the new 40-gallon breeders and start doing some fun stuff. Yeah. And I saw Leo's comment about like agreeing that plecos are the best. No. If I'm setting up a 40-gallon breeder specifically for one fish and it's not a pleco, then clearly I don't think plecos are the best. I do like plecos though. They're fun, man. I like plecos because some of them, especially if you can get them to like not hide all the time and become comfortable with you, that's good times. Like whenever my Wabenmooster in my breeding colony is out, and my male goes like neon yellow because he's like, ladies, I'm ready. And then he kicks the eggs out because he's a bad dad. But when you see him in his proper color and he's courting and like displaying got his fins flared out, he's got his bristles all up, he looks phenomenal, right? The fish looks amazing. You get to see the females come out from their hiding place under the log, and they've got that beautiful stripe, and their pattern's really clear and obvious. They're pretty sweet. Paul Soltero, Bentley, I was your age once, now I'm a lot older. Ain't that the truth? That reminds me, I have to, I'm technically participating in the Fish Fam Christmas, so I have to do this thing, where I have to make Fish Fam Christmas a moderator for whenever that occurs. It's not tonight. But, get ready. We might be doing some stuff. Okay, let's get on topic. I've 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 strung this out long enough. Um, I mentioned I was talking to Tom of TM Aquatics recently and talking plecos, and Tom also reached out to me directly in regards to a couple different things. First off, Mike from the Fish Tank Barn had put out this video here, and I'll put a link in chat so that if you for some reason haven't seen it, maybe go see it. It's not a very long video. I think it's like 8 minutes or so. But it was basically Mike from the Fish Tank Barn's take on what is a master breeder. Because in fish tube land, we will often hear master breeder, master aquatic horticulturist, an expert, all these different terms, right? And I want to give some love too, because Zenzo did a live stream over the weekend as well. And here's a link to that. And he starts at the topic, and then he goes into like kind of Q&A. But his topic is about like what is an expert. And it's interesting that a lot of these have all come around the same time. And I think a good amount of it is also related to this post that showed up on Facebook, which if you guys are in enough of the fish circles, you might have seen this particular post. I'll put it up on the screen now, from Mark Burdett. And he talked about the term like master breeder or something like that being tossed around. Kingfisher's catcher killing me, man. Being tossed around a lot. And his kind of personal way that he looks at it and that kind of stuff. And I won't necessarily like read this word for word, but basically one of the things that he said is that he can understand why there's aquarium clubs that bestow like an honorary title. So similarly, I'm a master aquatic horticulturist according to the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. I'm sure according to like a proper botanist, I'm just some dummy on the internet. Right? We can be fair with this. But that most of the people who he would think of as being very good fish breeders would almost never want to call themselves a master breeder, or would find it silly to call themselves that because maybe they're too humble, which is good. Humility is a very important thing in life. Brian, note to self: stop left clicking all of the links, Bentley links. Chat. Yeah, if you do it the wrong way, YouTube's not very smart about like auto opening new windows with their links, and you just like disappear. I've done that way more times than I would love to admit, and I'm a tech person, so I should know better. But anyway, I kind of wanted to talk about this because like I was talking with Tom, and Tom was very much like, "Hey, man, I would like to hear your perspective because of the way that you like to articulate things and kind of take two sides to stuff as opposed to just purely, this is the truth, or this is my opinion as truth, whatever the heck you want to take it, right?" So I kind of wanted to discuss this a little bit. And where I want to start is this. I think it is easy for us as aquarists, myself definitely included, to associate expertise in a subject as being an expert in something. And that's not the same thing. Experts are people that basically have knowledge with few peers, which is to say, Gary Lang is a rainbow fish expert. Johannes Graf is a rainbow fish expert. Whereas someone like me might have some expertise in rainbows because that's what we keep. And if you wanted to go like hyper high level in like literal definitions, right? An expert refers to someone who possesses unmatched proficiency in an area. Unmatched. So we're talking about exceptionally skilled, gifted, etc. individuals are experts. Expertise relates to a certain skill or knowledge a person has. So you can have expertise in a subject, but you can not be an expert in that field. Does that make sense? So I often think about people as having expertise, as opposed to necessarily what we should probably define as an expert. And maybe we throw around the title expert, meaning someone with expertise, and not truly what like an expert should be. And we might do the same thing with like master. I will always call Dean Tweedale Master Breeder Dean. That guy has bred a phenomenal number of fish, and if he decided to take the time to do the things to participate in the Breeder Awards program for my club, or probably almost any other club in the United States, he would qualify for Master Breeder. And I kind of like Mark's concept here in that it is an honorary title that clubs bestow upon people who take a lot of time enjoying portions of this hobby. Now, Mike from the Fish Tank Barn, who I saw is lurking in chat, his take, I kind of like his take too, which is to say that they're kind of the difference between a very good breeder of fish and someone you might say a master fish breeder is usually someone who is so dedicated to the hobby that maybe they are doing something or breeding a fish that no one else can. Maybe they're one of the first people ever to spawn a certain species of fish in captivity. Or they've bred a number of particularly difficult fish. So if we were to go kind of by that route, I would argue that my friend Ryan, Aquatics, starts to go into that realm of becoming someone you would consider a master breeder. He's bred a number of rainbow fish, a couple other things, but from what we can tell, he's the first person in the United States to breed that cousin, right, to the Akara that comes from Africa that's really only been collected once and is very limited. It came in from Sweden, if I remember correctly. Now, we could also look at somebody like Preston John, who occasionally drops by. He's kind of renowned throughout the fish fam as somebody who's bred reliably the Shotodenite puffer. And that's not an easy fish. You have to culture all sorts of special live foods, and that's one thing that he's very good at, is culturing live foods that are down to like the paramecium level. They're so tiny in order to get them through to start, right? And we could start looking, and this is another thing that Mike had talked about, is somebody who you have to culture like things like rotifers or something that's very difficult. It's not just breeding the fish. It's not just like, I keep a lot of guppies and they do all the work for me. I just feed them food and clean their tanks. There's things like that, right? Paul Sartero bringing out the Game of Thrones quotes with, that's what I do. I drink and I know things. Tyrion Lannister. It's a good quote, I won't lie. But my take is more like this. Most of the time when we talk about a master breeder within the fish fam, within FishTube, we're usually referring to somebody who has bred a lot of different fish and usually does it not purely at a level that is just, I'm going to breed this fish a couple times, then I'll move on. They're probably doing something with such efficiency that all of us aspire to do things like that person. Master Breeder Dean is phenomenally good at optimizing his breeding, raising a lot of fish for profit. Now, you might think this is purely a hobbyist thing. Breeding for profit is a very hobbyist-oriented thing. But to do it very, very well requires a level of expertise. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily like a true scientist. You're not an ichthyologist, but you do have a level of expertise that often we might say is, hey, this guy's really mastered breeding German blue rams or angelfish or whatever. We might look at someone of like Tom from TM Aquatic, somebody who specializes in catfishes, as having an expertise or being an expert. But then we might look at the kind of the level above him. It'd be somebody more like Eric Bodrock or Jeremy Bosch, right? Some of these people that have spawned stuff that is very difficult in numbers, and they're kind of really well known as being like, this is a guy who really knows his stuff and is very effective at breeding this type of fish. You could consider them a master breeder for that fish. But if we look at how most clubs do their breeder programs, I'll use probably the toughest club out there, the Missouri Aquarium Society, MASI, as my primary example. To achieve master breeder, that honorary title, right, you have to breed a certain number of points worth of fish. And I've actually pulled up a resource here just so I can reference it. So give me a sec. To hit master breeder, you have to have gotten 300 total points at least or more, and bred at least one species from what is called Class D. Those are all the fish that are very difficult. So this is things like wood cats, and some of your other like puffers would be in this range. Some of your very difficult to spawn fish that typically are not reliable spawners. They take some serious conditioning and stuff like that to do it correctly. There's a whole list of them that they have set up. And then on top of that, you have to have bred from at least 5 different families of fish and written at least one article on it, that Class D fish or a Class D fish that you've bred. What are the 5 families? Let's key in on this, because I think this is where certain programs that do breeder awards programs actually kind of make master a little more appropriate and not necessarily an expert or expertise. When we're looking at the families of fish, these are things like Melanitaniidae. So an example would be you have family, genus, then species. So an example, the Bozemanii rainbow. The species is Bozemanii. The genus is Melanitania. And the family is Melanitaniidae. And Melanitaniidae includes Chalatharinas, Melanitanias, Glossolepis, etc. Similar to like Bidoshidae includes Bidoshias, right? So like Bidoshia madagascarensis. Loricaridae is all your catfishes, and that's going to be like your Hypancistris, your Ancestris, blah, 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 blah. Cichlidae is all your cichlids, and that's like a enormous list. Like it spans 3 pages, it spans 3.5 pages. Just looking at all the different genus under that family, right? And there's some less in certain ones. You know, you've got like your Danionidae, so various Danios, etc. But you have to have from 5 different families. So it's not like you could breed only rainbow fish species and be a master. Maasai is fairly tough in that you kind of had to have done. Have you done some plecos? Okay, you done some catfish. Great. Did you do some tetras? Okay. Okay, now you're getting there. You got some angelfish. That's some cichlidae. You did some rainbow fish. There's some Melanitaniidae. You got 4 families. Not quite a master yet. You better find another one. Right? You have to work. There are going to be people that have done at like the farm level. And somebody mentioned Goliad farms in here. If somebody is at a level to where they can reliably farm fish, they're probably a master breeder. Yeah, if you'd like to see the link for the Missouri Aquarium Society, there's a couple of different links here. Let me give you that because they have a ton of information and a bunch of different lists. Omar, I'll give that to you specifically. Boom. But basically, you need to look at the two different sections. One is rules, and one is the species points. So they'll go all the way down to the species and list them by points, and that tells you their class, and you have to reference the rules section for class. But basically, a class D species, the hardest species, is only worth 20 points, and you only get it once. And then to top it off, let's say you want to do guppies, right? If there's all these different color forms of guppies, well, they do account for that. The first time you spawn a guppy, you get 5 points. You spawned a new color variety, that color variety is now worth 1 point. 20%. Is it a care species? They give you a little bonus because they really do care about cares, and they kind of give you some bonus points for doing care species. That's nice. It kind of includes cares and breeding as a singular program instead of two different programs, but just think about that. If the hardest species, things like woodcats, are worth 20 points, and you need 300 points or more to be qualified for this honorary title, Master Breeder, that's pretty tough. And I think at that point, you might be able to say, yeah, I think they've earned that title. But my take is basically this. I think we use terms as a matter of respect, which is to say, for people we know who are extremely good at certain things, if somebody we know is very, very good at breeding fish in high numbers and a lot of different species, we are probably going to call them master breeder. But is there really a official terminology for master breeder? Nope, not at all. It's a term of respect. And it's up to us individually, not collectively, individually, to determine what a master breeder or a master horticulturalist, etc., is to you. To me, I am certainly not a master breeder. I'm a novice breeder at best. But I know, because I have an insane passion for rainbow fish, quite a lot about them. So you might be able to say that I have some level of expertise about rainbow fish, but I am not an expert on rainbow fish. To me, an expert is someone like Gary Lang, Johannes Graf, Marcel, these few and far between, or like you really want to go to the highest level, we're talking about proper scientists that actually describe fish, Peter Unmack. Merits and titles, things like this, Master Aquatic Horticulturist. You could say, okay, Bentley, you got 10 Master Aquatic Horticulturists from Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. But does that mean you know plants better than Karen Randall? No way. Do I know plants even remotely as well as Crystal Castleman, a legit scientist? No effing way. But can I, in any given tank, usually have success with plants because of my experience and time spent gathering some level of expertise? Yes. Does that mean I'm a master aquatic horticulturalist to you? That's the question. To me, I like the title. It sounds fancy. So an example. This is a question in chat. We're kind of to the end of my take here. Which, by the way, Aquatic Heist, thank you so much for the super chat. I got right into stuff as he said that, but thank you very much, man. I know we had a little conversation in some comments earlier over the weekend. But this brings up a question that Bob Purcell mentioned. Any update on bestowing Master Aquatic Horticulturist title out, which is to say the program I've been trying to work on. The short answer, tech issues are drastically hindering the ability to get progress where I need it. Mostly it's because me and the other person who are working on this project, our real life work, our actual jobs are crazy busy right now. And as the tech sector especially is doing a lot of tightening, and some people are unfortunately losing their jobs, it means that for those of us who still have our jobs, we're kind of taking on even more work. So it's one of those things that you got to be careful about, right? I would love to get better, but an example would be for the Master Aquatic Horticulturist program that I'm trying to put together. Very similar to MassI, I specifically have requirements designed in my system to where you need to have been successful propagating a number of different types of plants. So in the case of plants, this would be things like epiphytes versus rosettes versus stems versus things like liverworts and moneyworts and mosses, right? Because they all grow a little differently. And they all have slightly different requirements about how you get successful with either propagation. In some case, it's how you get them to flower, right? These kind of things. There are little sprinklings of requirements that spread your knowledge base out. What my goal is with my Master Aquatic Horticulturist program, certainly by a botanist standards would not be a master. But my goal is to effectively force people to challenge themselves to try multiple types of aquatic plants. Find success with multiple types of aquatic plants so that they learn all these different plant basics. And if you learn the basics of how to do a bunch of different stems and a bunch of different epiphytes and a bunch of different this and a bunch of different that, in the end, you will have taught yourself through failure and success and being willing to keep trying even when you struggle, how to master the basic skill set to be can have at least some semblance of expertise with all aquatic plants. Once you understand how to be successful with a bulb plant, you can apply that to pretty much every bulb plant. The difference comes down to some of the small nuances. So an example would be like in the world of epiphytes, right? We know that Anubias is super tough, but if you blast it with way too much light, it's not going to be happy. We know that Java Fern is relatively easy in soft water, but can handle hard water. But if you don't give it enough potassium, it's going to be pissed at you. We know that Boost comes in like 8,000 different names, even though it's probably only like a few hundred different plants. I'm calling you out, Boost industry. Can't stand this. It's my Boost Hades Ultra Omega Purple. Looks oddly like regular Hades Purple, but I promise it's different. But things like this where they all kind of grow similar, but they have small differences in what makes them unique. And it's learning those differences that will help you achieve expertise and eventually master aquatic plants. That's my goal. That's how I look at things. The only way that I would ever consider myself a master breeder of any form is to have consistent and reliable success, seemingly no matter what type of fish I am willing to try, as long as I am patient enough to keep continuously trying on even the most difficult fish that I choose to challenge myself with. This all spawns, by the way, this all goes back to philosophy that I learned when I was younger. There is a phenomenal book out there called The Book of the Five Rings. It's written by Musashi Miyamoto. It's effectively a book of philosophy written by the most famous sword duelist from Japan's history. And the rough lesson that you learn from the entirety of this book, and it's not huge, it's a fairly easy read, is that to truly be a master of one thing, you must find a way to master many things. Which is to say, you can't truly master something like plants until you've also figured out how to master water quality, filtration, light, substrate, nutrition, all these things that can make us have extreme success with aquatic plants require individual levels of expertise in order to master that one thing. To be good is easy. To be great requires you to be good at many things to further push you in that one thing. That's my take on experts and master breeders or aquatic horticulturalists. I hope you appreciate it. I'm curious, chat, if you violently disagree with me. Because I think there's been some interesting takes that have come out recently, which is very nice. And Dr. Maz, thank you very much for the aquarium towel. You didn't need to. Now I'm going to have to send you more money. You quit doing that. And also, yes, I did see the fish are on the way. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see a box and not open it at all. And then hand it off to my friend. But yeah. There's it's interesting, you know, it's kind of like there's similar martial arts levels of philosophy that come from Bruce Lee, right? Bruce Lee famously said, "Be water, my friend," which is to say, if you put water in a glass, it becomes the glass. If you put water in a bowl, it becomes the bowl. It's a very famous interview. And the whole concept is that it's not about rigidity. It's about being flexible and adapting to your environment. If you can take a basic skill set, and no matter where you go or how your water changes or the time of year or the CO2 you're using, the light you're using, whatever it may be, if you can adapt to those changes and continuously find yourself successful, you have found definitely expertise and probably some level of mastery in that thing. If you can continuously adapt to change, you are probably pretty damn good at whatever it is you're doing. You're gonna peek into like the way my psycho brain works right now and the way that I look at things. I hope you're having a fun trip. Luke, even being able to grow multiple types of plants doesn't really mean mastery. Case in point, my 50-gallon. Will your program have consideration for things like flowering, immersed, not? Flowering, yes. So, it's a good question. On immersed. Here's the thing. I actually think it is far easier to grow a majority of plants. There's very limited places where I think this is the opposite. Immersed than it is, especially if you're wanting to flower. It is so much easier to flower plants immersed. It is far more difficult to flower plants that are submerged. At least to get them to the point of where they get emergent growth to where they can flower. That's way more difficult than when you're dealing with most plants in some level of immersed grow setup, whether it's super high humidity or not. And there's arguments between all these things. I've got lots of friends that are very, very good at immerse growing plants, and then they put them in a tank and they struggle. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen. I'm actually trying to help somebody right now who started with a dry start method, and they flooded their tank and then immediately had a massive outbreak of blackbeard algae. So there's things like that. Scotty, yes, I saw your mail. Sorry, I'll be back to it relatively soon. I've just been super busy the last couple days. And Bentley is 10 Ricos behind in the stream. I'm kind of like up with chat, but I need to go back and chat for questions. Anyway, at this point, folks, if you have questions, at Bentley Pasco makes it a lot easier for me to see things. Yeah. Let's go nuts. Fish Tank Bar mentioned that once you get Master Breeder in our club, which is the is that Circle City for Detroit or Motor City? You're Motor City. Circle City is another one that's fairly nearby. You get a lifetime membership at the club. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I hope you have some stringent requirements for that, and not just purely point based, because there's ways to break those. But yeah, it's been tough. I gotta go like literally bash my dev friend over the head and be like, need work timeline. Jorge Bentley, do you have any experience about Epistylus and how to cure it? It looks a lot like ick. So, this is where I will fundamentally acknowledge that I am a terrible person to diagnose fish disease or fix fish disease. I'm very fortunate in that I really haven't encountered a ton of fish diseases in my time doing aquatics. I typically see kind of the same stuff because I deal with rainbow fish primarily, and they're really only susceptible to like kind of 2 or 3 things that you see more commonly. Most commonly, unfortunately, is fish tuberculosis or mycobacterium, and that's just like the kiss of death for rainbows because they just do not fight that off at all. But yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not too knowledgeable on that. You might try a number of different people in chat might be able to handle that one in particular. Maybe Dr. Mazerall, but I would imagine there's plenty of stuff written up on it online. If not, there are a few really awesome aquatic vets that are out there that you can contact that can kind of help put you on the right track. I'm the worst person. The best I would be doing is like a Google search and trying to walk you through my process of how I would research it. I knocked something over by banging my cheapo desk too much. Rocky and Miles, Bentley, my tiger lily's melted completely. All that's left is a bulb. Will it grow back? Yes, it can. The rest of the plants are doing great. Thanks. Yeah, they certainly can. I mean, you can even detach. So if you have a healthy bulb, right, you can detach the plant from it if it has a root system, have that planted down, and that bulb will eventually form a brand new lily. As long as the bulb is dense enough to remain submerged, where it stays on the substrate surface, it doesn't start floating, it can, in theory, bring another one. And sometimes it will take months. It'll just sit there effectively dormant. And often it's usually during the winter. It takes until spring, so be prepared for that. But yes, you can get another one from the bulb, so don't go pulling the bulb out and throwing it away. Just keep it on the surface of your substrate where it's available to light, and make sure that you got nutrition in the water column, some kind of liquid fertilizer or something like that, and eventually you can get another one to grow out. If the root system is still intact, you can have things coming out from that root system, kind of like when crypts melt, but then they come back because the roots still store a certain amount of energy that they can regrow things. That's another possibility too. So don't give up hope. Tiger lilies can be finicky. It's a patience game. You're going to have to wait that one out. Desert Fish Keeper, any experience with Boos Dark Skeleton King? Yes. Boos Plant named it, not me. It's under highlight and CO2, and it looks like it's slowly dying. Plenty of nutrients. So all of the Skeleton King varieties, whether it's black, dark green, etc., they do not like to live submerged for a long period of time. Basically, they have to be immersed to survive. And this is one of the parts of the boost industry that I hate the most, is they don't inform people of that, because they know people like us who really like the way that plant looks will just keep buying them and trying them over and over and over again, and it's continuous revenue. You basically have to have so that only the roots are submerged and the rest of it is out of the water. Then it will survive. Otherwise, even if you're blasting CO2 and decent light and great nutrients, because I've done this too, it will slowly die back and eventually just die on. I've tried with both Green Skeleton King and Dark Skeleton King, and I think the Black Skeleton King. I've tried 3 different varieties to get them to survive submerged. None of them have, and I've tried multiple times because I'm stubborn. Yeah, they said it was fine underwater with highlight and CO2 on their website. Of course they did. Of course they did. One of the best boost experts that I know has a presentation that he's done to our club, and he was basically like, yeah, Skeleton King, they'll tell you it can survive underwater. It can't. Inevitably, it will die. But you won't have that strong leaf ribbing. Typically, the leaves that you'll get that start to kind of survive are very tiny. So, like, if that leaf was this big, let's say, this is not an accurate representation, but let's say it was this big, they'll be this big. They'll be teeny tiny in comparison. And then eventually, they will die. Now, the ones that do well submerged are things like the various brownies all do pretty well. Green wavy and all the ones that have a similar leaf shape to that do fairly well. If it has a much more rigid, large leaf, it typically doesn't like being submerged long periods of times. But things like black marble can do very well for long-term underwater. A lot of like the Catherine, so the very small kind of crinkly leaves, typically those can do well. But if you really want to have massive success with a lot of those, you almost have to have them immersed in some way, shape, or form. Or have them to where they're coming in and out of water a lot. But yeah, the smaller the leaf, typically the better it does submerged, because it comes from an area where it spends more time submerged anyway. Those super big leaves, they don't stay sturdy underwater. It's just something with booze. But like black marble, pink lady, silverstein, where the leaf is about yay-ish, about a quarter in size roughly, just kind of that teardrop shape. Those typically do fairly well underwater. But not always. They can be very finicky. They like really soft water, to be honest. And a lot of CO2. They're very finicky little butts. But they look so cool, which is why I would keep trying them. I'm trying some fun stuff with my next tank. We'll see if I can do things right. Probably not. Oh, man. Okay. Legion Aquatics, I have Elodia planted in my tank, and it's doing great, but I was wondering, do you think it will adjust to floating if I wanted to float it? I'm trying to convert the tank to a guppy tank. I imagine Elodia should be okay floating just because of how long it can naturally grow. And it's kind of similar, it has a similar like leaf structure to something in the sense of not necessarily like its shape, but its rigidity and stuff like that to like how hornwort is, and hornwort does really, really well floating. I would give it a try, but I wouldn't like float all of your Elodia right away. I would start floating some of it and see how that handles it. And then it all handles it well, then you can float the rest of the mass. But if it doesn't handle it well, then what you might try to do is have things like planters that hold the Elodia and allow you to get some like big bushy structure. Or potentially look at a better floating plant like hornwort, water wisteria, water sprite, Guppy grass, if you really want to go the easiest and yet most painful route, if you were to ask me. I hate guppy grass. Stuff is the devil to me, but personal taste or personal taste, right? It's mostly because that tank hates everything that a person I would like me would normally do, because I keep rainbow fish primarily, right? And it's like, oh, you want some semblance of flow? I'm not very happy with that. But yeah, uh, yeah, it's unfortunately what certain, just given chat, it's unfortunate what certain boost sellers do. There's a number of offenders out there, but usually it's because they're getting their information from the people that are harvesting it, and they will say whatever they can to sell it. Keep that in mind too. It's not 100% the final seller's fault, but they have some. Omar, I would love to build a tidal tank just for those hard boosters one day. Haven't quite figured out how to build it. I know I'll need a sump and times. Have you ever seen such a tank? Okay, so in person, no. But I've seen people that have put together very river system style tanks. Because there's some that even have like the sump that's built in the tank itself, but there's the under chamber where there's this rotational type water flow. It's all about, like, the way that you do that right with boosts specifically is you want things like rock work or wood that are coming out of the water that give you lots of space for the rhizome to grow, where the roots will be down in the water and mostly feeding and wicking off of the wood itself, but the leaves can be out of water. And you might have to mist them and stuff like that every once in a while, like set up a mister or something like that, kind of like how you do in paludariums, right? But that would be the easiest way to pull that off without going like super crazy. Granted, like, the Germans do all sorts of crazy stuff. If you want the best examples, it's Germany. They've got all sorts of wild river system tanks out there at some of the stores and stuff like that. And they're very impressive. Let's be very clear. They're very impressive. Alex, I have never bought any boosts because they have been destroying the native environment. Got to change words for YouTube, man. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of farmed boosts, and thankfully, you can find many of the sellers are becoming better about distinguishing which of their boosts come from farms and cultures as opposed to wild collection that is destroying a lot of their stuff. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's really tough. You kind of have to know what is more commonly grown in labs and farms and just select those species, or know that hobbyists are growing them in mass. Certain hobbyists do a really good job of that stuff. Nabokov fan, I'm on my second spawn this month of a ton of fry with the black Schultzii cories. Very nice. I know that my friend Tom at TM Aquatics is working on those too. What fish that you struggle with breeding the most? That's a good question. I was the fish that I was having the most trouble with, arguably most recently, has been my stupid Wabenmuster plecos, because my dad, my main, I have a dominant male in a tank and a subdominant male, and the two girls in that tank always go to the dominant male, and he constantly kicks the eggs out. And I've just been busy enough to the point of where I haven't been able to reliably, like, raise the eggs in separate places. Yeah, so there's been some stuff there besides the zebra plecos. Of course I had trouble with those. I killed them. So I'm not a master. But before that, I really struggled getting any of the Melanitania ewer that I had to get eggs to survive without fungusing. I tried doing, I think, 6 or 7 mops worth of ewer eggs, even when I was at limited time, but when my roommate used to live with me and he could actively try to feed the baby fish when I was working my brains out. And just, we could not, even with some of the tricks with, like, using Prazipro or even methylene blue, we could not prevent those freaking eggs from fungusing. And my thought is that I'm wondering if the Iwers are kind of similar in a way to Kalitawa or the Myrisai, where I could bring them a bit lower in temperature and have better success. But then I got to a point where I just didn't have the time to keep trying, and then I lost almost all of them in heat wave. And then the last couple were just two females and no boys. Makes it hard. So I eventually have to try and refine that fish because that one was very, very tough. Rocky and Miles, I have an Amano shrimp that's showing yellow inside. Do you know why, or is this something to be concerned? I mean, if it's really big, it's a female. And those are eggs. Because their eggs are like bright yellow inside their bodies. They'll eventually get them to where they're larvae and kick them out, but they won't be able to survive because the larvae need to be basically in proper salt water to survive through their larval stage before they can survive in freshwater. That's why, effectively speaking, all Amano shrimp are naturally caught. Now, if it, or wild caught rather, naturally caught. I can English, I promise, man. Now, if it's in a different part of the body than in the back part where they'd be fanning eggs like any other shrimp, then I'm not certain. You might be looking at the, what was that fungus that affects shrimp? Somebody in chat's gonna know. So you know I'm not good at shrimp. I don't know any of these things. I'm just a dum-dum on the internet. Xanadu. Yeah. What lower temps on the Kalitawa Myrisai for better breeding success? So in the case of the Kalitawa and the Myrisai, it's about getting the balance of male to female in your fry. Because if you go too warm, you get almost all girls. You go really cool, you get almost all males. If you sit right around that like 74 to 76 range, especially right about 76 Fahrenheit, you get about 50-50. So I'm just curious if it's one of those things where, like, if we get them too hot, those eggs fungus too easily, unlike something like, say, Bozemanai, where it's like you can keep them at like 83 for the eggs and they don't care. They're pretty rock solid. But maybe certain species where they naturally come from don't get quite that hot and become more susceptible to something in their egg state at higher temperatures. I don't know. It's a wild guess. It's certainly not like something I've done great research on or asked experts. It's just kind of like a wild guess as to why I kept having issues. But eventually, we'll try again. Gotta try again. Although I got other fish I want to breed first. I need to start breeding running rivers because I love those fish a lot. Omar, I boycott the poach stuff. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to boost, there's kind of two stances. You're either like one of those like boost psychos that wants to collect every type of boost that comes out the second it comes out, or you're like most of the rest of us who want to responsibly try to protect habitats, and you're doing everything you can not to buy it, but somebody else is doing it, and that's the problem. It's going to come down to the point of where folks like you, more and more folks like you, especially up the chain, when it comes to the distribution levels and stuff like that, decide that we're only going to accept farmed boosts. We're not going to take stuff, and we're going to validate that it truly is farmed before we'll ever sell it. You know, it has to come in tissue culture or whatever, and it's not something that's just been ripped out of the environment. There's got to be a way, right? It's got to be a way to fix it. If we want the long-term health of the hobby and some of those things to exist, we have to find a way. My female Botswana keeps laying eggs every day, but the stupid male never bothers fertilizing them anyway. Anything I can do to encourage him more? I do a 50% weekly water change. I mean, the question is he just young and dumb? Right? But I would say more than likely what you need to do is if you're not already doing so, step up some of your food quality. And I don't necessarily mean like you're not feeding nice enough food, but more like if you're doing a nice flake, start moving to frozen foods more regularly. If you're like doing, maybe you're like me, I feed frozen food once a week, or at least I try to. and I feed something like, for my plecos, I'll feed something like Rapashi. I'll feed it for a couple days in a week, and then I'll do a week without it, and then I'll make it a new batch, feed it for a couple days in that week. Right? I have these kind of gaps where it's like I give them something, a step up in quality from what I normally do. Or do like live baby brine. It might just be that, like, to the male, as much as he wants to court, maybe he's just dumb and doesn't know what he's doing, or potentially he's sterile. That's could be the really unfortunate one, is the male or female might be sterile, and despite throwing eggs and doing the courting dance, they might not have what it takes to make it work. You know what I'm saying? It really depends on the type of bozeman you're dealing with. Because if you're dealing with like a farmed bozeman from Florida, there's a potential that they're sterile. It happens every once in a while, man. Well, was it 5 out of 10 guys have problems? It's the old joke adage about fertility. Kelly Foreman, Jason, you can come to Indiana and get mine. Wait a minute. What are we getting? What are we doing? What are we giving away here, Kelly? Why aren't you sending them to me? How dare you? Okay, we can do a sports question. That's fine. Bob wants a sports question. That'd probably end out our night, but maybe not. Thoughts on the growth of college football conferences into massive ones versus the legacy 12 teams? Will this dilute the ability for out-of-conference games that help smaller schools? Have I ever mentioned that I hate college football? Mostly because I don't like the playoff structure. But I think inevitably you're always going to have those small schools that are going to get paid to get beat up by big schools. Right? You're always going to have that. But what I think is more likely to happen is as things like the SEC and stuff merge into these larger and larger conferences, all basically in an attempt to generate more money, because it's really what they're trying to do. They're just trying to generate more money. Not that they are actually struggling. Most of the schools that are out there, if you've looked at any of the reports, they make way more money than they need to operate correctly, which is why they pay some of these coaches atrocious amounts of money, which I can't stand. But that's a whole different indictment. In the end, I think you'll actually breed more internal competition to those ultra large divisions. But the question is that good for the health of collegiate sports in football or baseball or whatever? Because it's happening in more than just football. The question becomes, is that good for the long-term health? They are thinking 100% short term. I think what you realistically want is some semblance from the NCAA of regulation that balances things out better. You get the beauty in some sense of the NFL is that with a salary cap and the way the draft is designed, inevitably, unless you continuously hire people that just don't know what they're doing, which some teams unfortunately have a history of continuously hiring, like general managers and stuff that just don't know what they're doing, don't know how to play, don't know how to adapt to the modern game. You will see competitive teams rise and fall. Look at this year in NFL football. Everyone expected the Denver Broncos to just destroy people and the Seahawks to suck. Most of us expected Miami wouldn't be that good. And the Giants and the Jets are the Giants and the Jets. They're just going to be bad. And yet a bunch of these teams, slowly through the draft and through smart general manager moves, have become competitive. And some of the teams that we expect, like, they're just a quarterback away, and now they've got Russell Wilson. Well, it turns out, maybe the other changes around that team are causing them to fall apart. And they suck. And I'm going to profit from it. Because my beloved Seahawks, whether they do well for the rest of the season or not, keep getting a better and better draft pick courtesy of that trade. But it's more like that. Like for years and years and years, the Patriots dominated, right? And we're seeing that slowly but surely they need to retool because they're struggling. Teams like the Lions, Xanadu, your beloved Detroit Lions, we are starting to see something where the players, whether you like it or not, like Detroit has had years and years and years of just terrible teams. And a lot of it is ineptitude at the upper management level. But you have a coach, whether you think he's a great coach or not, that the players have bought in so hard with that they are playing their brains out. The passion that that team is showing and just never giving up, doing everything, fighting for every little inch that that team is doing is freaking inspiring. If you're into sports, the story of the Detroit Lions right now is phenomenal. Dan Campbell, I love that guy because he fosters a culture where these professional athletes, they're not kids in college hoping for the dream of professionalism in football and the potential million life-changing money, to where they'll let these jerk coaches bully them, like people like Urban Meyer and in Alabama, Nick Saban, all them assholes, right? These are people who inspire professional athletes. Similarly, I'm going to draw this back to fish. You ready to get psycho with this thing? I hope that the passion that folks like myself have for this hobby inspire others to go beyond what they thought they could do. Am I a phenomenal fish keeper? No. But man, do I love keeping fish. I can name easily 10 people that are better even at the fish I love the most than me. But I am very fortunate that wonderful people like you in chat right now and the replay crew let me just ooze out of every pore my love for certain fish. In many cases, some of those people go, yeah, if this guy likes these stupid rainbow fish so much, maybe they're worth trying. I relate that to sports any day of the week. If you are so passionate about something that it can inspire others around you, you don't have to be, back to our topic, an expert or a master at something. You just have to love it so much that it inspires other people to want to love it as much as you do. Bam. Merged it all. Job's done. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.